Hey, Alyssa. Hey, Sarah. I heard we're making a video about life cycles. Yeah? Yeah. What is that exactly? I don't know. We might have to do some exploring. Do we go through a life cycle? I think so. Because a life cycle is when you're born, and then you grow, and then reproduction, and then death, right? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Should we explore some life cycles today? Sounds good.
Okay, so not everyone's life cycle is the same. We all grow at different rates, right? So me, as a human being, my life is a bit different than this giant tree behind me. Who do you think's older, this tree or me? Guess what? This tree is 450 years old. So everything has a different lifespan and a different life cycle. And we're gonna explore each of those today. Okay, so we are gonna explore our pollinator garden for one very particular life cycle. This life cycle is entirely different from our life cycle, and it's something called a metamorphosis. Try saying metamorphosis 3 times fast. Metamorphosis, metamorphosis, metamorphosis! So I'm standing here in our pollinator garden. If you're thinking about what type of life cycle I might be talking about, something like a butterfly might be ringing a bell. So we're going to take a closer look at how this life cycle functions, searching for the very first stage of our butterfly's life cycle, and that is one of these, an egg. Now, is an egg this big? Not so much. We're searching for an egg just on these tiny little leaves. I'm going to grab some special equipment. I might need some magnifying glasses in order to find it. Let's see what we could see. Aha! There it is, right there. It's just this teeny tiny little yellow dot on this tiny, tiny little leaf. All right, you may have had a hard time seeing that, so I'm gonna let you give my glasses a try. Check out that tiny little yellow dot. That is our butterfly egg. Can anybody guess that next stage of life after this egg? We have our caterpillar. And our caterpillar is what comes out of the egg. And the caterpillar is known as the larva. And so the way this caterpillar grows is it's going to eat the individual leaves, which are these kind of little pieces. And it's going to eat those leaves, and it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And how that caterpillar grows is it's going to shed or molt its skin. And that's how it gets its stripes. So if we take a look, we can actually see some smaller caterpillars and some larger caterpillars. We have a small one that looks a bit different. And so when these guys are actually hatched out of their egg, before they get their stripes, they kind of look like bird poop. And that's to help protect them against predators. And as these caterpillars grow, they're going to eat leaves, eat leaves, eat leaves, poop, just like you did, and grow and grow and grow, and then they go into their next stage of life. So this is the larval stage. The next stage is called a pupa. This is a chrysalis. And our caterpillar forms this chrysalis as the last molt of its life. And inside of this chrysalis is a butterfly that's growing. And that is the last stage of that animal's life, is the adult stage, which is the butterfly. So the last stage of our butterfly's life is, of course, the actual butterfly. So our metamorphosis goes from egg to larva to pupa to adult. And in this case, we have our egg, our caterpillar, our chrysalis, and our adult. So when our butterfly comes out of its chrysalis, it's gonna find flowers. So the flowers are where our butterfly gets its food. And then that life cycle starts all over again. So our adult butterfly needs nectar, and that's what this butterfly is doing right now, is feeding from these flowers. And then our butterfly is going to find a mate. The female will lay eggs on the host plant. The egg will hatch, and then that caterpillar will eat that host plant, grow, form its chrysalis, and start all over again. All right, now let's take a ride with Sarah to the back of the garden and learn about another type of animal that goes through a metamorphosis. It's gonna take a minute to get to the back. Let's pause for a dance break.
the spring garden at the fountain to explore a life cycle that's been taking place here all summer long. So a couple months ago, we spotted some southern toads here, and they were laying their eggs in the fountain. The way that it works is the male rides on the female's back, and she swims around, and she is laying her eggs, and he fertilizes them. And in a normal pond setting, what they would do is they would wrap these long strands of jelly with the eggs in them around vegetation so that the eggs don't float away.
In this video, the toads are actually wrapping their eggs around the tubing of the fountain.
So after these eggs are laid, they're only going to hang out as eggs for about 2 to 3 days, and then they're going to hatch. When they hatch, does a toad come out? No, they hatch as tadpoles. So they're going to be going through the life cycle we call metamorphosis, because the juveniles and the adults are different stages. So when they hatch, they are tadpoles. And when they're tadpoles, they're mostly just going to be swimming around, hiding, and they're going to be eating algae. And first they're going to grow their back legs, then they're going to grow their front legs, then they're going to lose their tail, and after about 2 months' time, they are going to become toadlets, or little tiny toads. And what they'll do is they'll actually kind of wait along the edge and kind of keep a lookout and see if any of their brothers and sisters have become toadlets. And once there's a few toadlets, they will actually emerge from the water together because there's a little bit more safety in numbers. So let's take a little dive into our fountain and see if we can see any of the remaining tadpoles. And go check out some higher grounds. Let's come over here to higher ground and see if we can find any of the toadlets. This is a good spot for them because there's a lot of leaf litter, so it gives them a lot of hiding places, and it's also a place where a lot of decomposers and bugs will live, so there's a lot for them to eat. And it looks like we have one right here. See this little tiny guy? So he'll continue to hang out in this area probably for the rest of the summer. Maybe he'll move not too far from here, but all he's really focused on right now is eating, growing, and hiding. So our toadlets spend the rest of the summer eating and growing. And then for the winter time, what they're gonna do is they're gonna find a place with either a lot of like debris or mud, and they're pretty much just gonna bury themselves for the winter. They don't do a true hibernation, but they do go into a torpor, which is when their heart rate and their breathing slows way down and they go into a deep, deep sleep. And then when spring comes, they're gonna wake up and eat and grow and eat and grow. This is an adult female southern toad. And so the females are going to be larger and rounder than the males, and they can be found in a little bit more of these upland habitats here, so probably still pretty close to water because that's where they're going to need to lay their eggs, but they can venture out a little bit further. They're going to eat a lot of bugs and worms and things of that nature. And just like the toadlets, they do spend the winter times in torpor, kind of buried. And mostly they're going to find shady spots to hide during the day, and they're going to come out in the evenings and mornings and do their hunting. So their lifespan is about 10 years. Not all of our toads are going to make it to be 10 years old. When they're tadpoles, they might get eaten by predators. When they're toadlets, they might get eaten by predators. And even when they are full-grown size, it's still possible. But if they live to their full life expectancy, they can live for about 10 years. Every year, an adult toad is going to lay about 2,000 to 4,000 eggs. So in her lifetime, she is going to start that life cycle of metamorphosis over and over and over again with all of the eggs that she lays.
Okay, now that we've learned about the life cycle of two different animals, our butterfly and our toad, those metamorphoses are actually a little bit different. Our butterfly goes through something called a complete metamorphosis, where it has 4 different stages: our egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Our southern toad goes through an incomplete metamorphosis, and actually those changes happen a lot more slow, and so that's considered the egg, the nymph, and then the adult. So that tadpole stage as it's growing is considered the nymph. So that has 3 stages, and our complete metamorphosis has 4. Now we're going to go explore and meet some animals and decide whether they have a metamorphosis, whether it's complete or incomplete, or they don't go through metamorphosis at all, like us.
I'm an owl. Who knows if I go through metamorphosis or not? I do not go through metamorphosis. I lay eggs, which then hatch into baby owls. I take care of them and help feed them while they're still really young, and when they're old enough, they leave the nest and start their own life until they grow up into adults. This aquatic habitat looks like the perfect place to find another amphibian. Here we have a frog. Do frogs go through metamorphosis? Like other amphibians, including the southern toads we met earlier, frogs do go through metamorphosis. They start out life as an egg, then they're a tadpole, and then they become a small version of an adult frog. This is an incomplete metamorphosis.
I'm a red fox. Do I go through a metamorphosis? No, I don't go through a metamorphosis. I'm a mammal. My young are called kits, and I feed my young with milk, like all mammals. These kits will grow, and they'll look like adults, just like me. Looks like I found a scallop here. I wonder what type of life cycle this animal goes through. Let me think about that. Any guesses on whether it's a metamorphosis or not? So our scallop does go through a metamorphosis. It starts out as an egg, it grows into its larval stage, and then it starts growing its shell, and then it turns into an adult.
Oh, almost didn't see you there. Do you guys think that this snake goes through metamorphosis? Snakes do not go through metamorphosis. The adults lay eggs, and when they hatch, little tiny snakes that just look like miniature versions of the adults hatch out.
Now that we've talked about metamorphosis, really got me thinking. Do we go through a metamorphosis?
Well, we don't. So when we're born, we're basically just a miniature version of the person that we're going to grow into. But we do still grow and change throughout our life. We just don't go through those distinct stages like we would if we went through metamorphosis.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Some animals have lots of offspring, and some animals only have a few. Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of animals that have a lot of offspring don't really take care of them, and so their chances of survival aren't very high. But the fact that they had a lot means that there's a chance that a small percentage of their offspring are going to make it to adulthood and be able to make their own offspring. Whereas animals that have fewer offspring, like mammals, they take care of their babies, and so they don't need to have as many because the care that they give them helps them to survive into adulthood.
It makes sense because Most animals want to pass on their genes and grow and have generations after generations, a lot like our families, and we have generations and generations as we grow. Life cycles are really interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I'm glad we decided to make a video about them.
Me too. Thanks for joining us.